Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week's DoD Contract Academy. This week, I have returning guests Mike and Rich from Matos Builders. You may have heard our initial interview. It was one of our most popular podcast episodes. And they're back here to talk about what's going on and what we can see in the future here. What's going on, guys?
Not much. How you doing?
Can't complain. Another day, another podcast.
Good. Well, thanks for having us.
No, love having you guys on. You guys have an awesome story. And, Mike and Rich, you guys have a very interesting company, and your, I guess your focus area, it's a little bit different than a lot of the people that come on the podcast, a lot of the companies that are selling to the government. We do have a lot of, technical, tech specific, software specific type of businesses, but you're doing something that resonates with a lot of our audience. So maybe one of you could give us a quick overview on what is Matos doing, and we could talk about where you're going from here.
Sure. So we started about 15 years ago. Actually started in my basement. Mike and I were roommates, and then have just kind of grown ever since. Right now we're up to about 60 employees. We do a lot of, we're a construction company, a lot of DoD, a lot of civilian agency work, and then a lot of work outside of federal government that's still kind of in that institutional, arena. So utility companies, hospitals, stuff like that. And recently, in the last couple of years, we've expanded a little bit outside of construction and have started dipping our toe into facilities maintenance and management. So
interesting.
Yep. So and Ricky, I'm sure we'll talk about today. Recently entered into a joint venture for that purpose. So we can get to that later in the episode.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. Maybe, Mike, just to get you talking here a little bit too, maybe I could ask you, just from so you guys are partners, correct?
Yep. Correct.
And could you tell me maybe a little bit about what the role is for each of you? Have you guys separated out what you're doing? Because I know sometimes, as you're growing a company and you have a couple people that are owners of the company and running things, separating what you're doing. Have you guys figured that out, or still sorting through?
There's a lot of overlap with each of us. We focus mainly on business development and operations, and then the back office stuff we've parsed out, and we have somebody else who does that. But Rich and I are meeting with clients, overseeing the projects that we're working on right now, and just trying to overall grow the company.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And I know we talked a little bit about what I thought was really interesting. We talked a little bit about some of the lab work you guys were doing and focused on in some of your initial projects. And now it sounds like you're branching off into some new territory, which is pretty common in government contracting, finding a niche that you start off with. And then, if you do good work, and obviously you guys are doing great work, and working with your government contacts, they want to use you on different things, right? And kind of expanding. So you mentioned joint venture at the beginning of this. And so there's probably a lot of people listening that aren't sure what that is. So maybe you could talk a little bit about joint venture, why you're doing that, and, to talk about, what the benefits are.
Sure. So we are actually in two joint ventures. So the concept behind, and the joint venture mentor protege. So the concept with SBA is if you sign up with, we're obviously a small business. We sign up with a large business to partner. The large business, it gives them access to small business set-aside contracts, and it gives you access to their horsepower and past performance to be able to compete on stuff that you wouldn't be able to go after by yourself. So
it also helps us, see how they run their operations, how we can refine our processes, kind of learn from a larger company who's been around a little bit longer and can show us kind of how they do things, and we can implement certain processes that they use.
Sure. Yeah. So, it sounds like, is there a difference? Because some people may be asking themselves this: what's the difference when I use the term joint venture between just a typical subcontracting relationship and the joint venture? Is that more of the mentor process, the mentor protege piece you're speaking to?
Yes and no. So any two companies can joint venture. The large businesses joint venture with each other all the time to spread risk. For us, yes, it is. It is the mentor piece where we can see, like Mike said, how they operate, how they do things, and then we can kind of emulate that on our other projects. It's not prime sub. You're in there together. So how you divvy up the duties is up to you, and you both have to perform. That they're, everybody can research the requirements, but there are performance requirements from both companies in a joint venture. Yeah.
So that's a key difference then, right? So you're not going in as a subcontractor to a prime. You're essentially going in together, on any of these projects. It's really interesting. And when you formed this, so one of my questions is, did you reach out to them on your own, or did you apply for the mentor protege program through SBA, and did they help match you with people? How did that work?
So we're in two, and we found both companies. So we're in one with Grunley Construction for construction projects, and that we spoke to a number of different large businesses and just seemed to have the best fit with them. So that's who we went forward with.
Okay.
And then the building maintenance joint venture is with a company called MCore Government Services. And we had actually been speaking to them for years, met them at trade shows, and would keep running into them. And, just over the years got to know each other, and then entered into it with them. That's kind of how they both went down.
Okay.
But no, the SBA did not introduce us to anybody.
Gotcha. Okay. And it's a key point too, because sometimes a company applies for something, even a certification, or, in this case, we're talking about joint ventures, but how much is the government going to help you versus what do you got to do on your own? And,
you're on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own. That's how I feel too about the SBIR program. For those listening, the government will do a little bit of kind of matching you with potential government customers, but everyone I know that's successful there just really grinded on their own and went out and found their own contacts, teaming partners and whatnot. So, and that's one of the reasons you guys are as successful as you are. How much have you done? So, well, let me back up. How long have you had the joint venture agreements in place now?
So the one with Grunley we've had for about 1.5 years, and the one with MCore has recently been signed in the last 6 months.
Okay. And have you been able to land any contracts as a joint venture yet, or?
We have 2 with Grunley. We have an IDIQ to install electric vehicle charging stations for the GSA. And then we have a standalone construction contract for a GSA project in Baltimore.
Okay. No, that's excellent. You're in an interesting place here, because we talk a lot about companies, like how to get started and whatnot. But as you guys know, the real work starts after you're on contract and you're starting to build your teams out and you're starting to win more contracts and expand. What do you think have been some of the biggest challenges since you've kind of seen this success on the federal side and trying to expand from there?
Finding good people. There seems to be a shortage of people. We have ads on LinkedIn all the time. We're looking for project managers, superintendents. We have interesting projects. They're just trying to find people to run them.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you have 16 people, I think, at the beginning of this now.
60.
Oh, 60. Okay. 60 people on the team. What is the just rough percentage of people that are on, for instance, your sales and business development team versus kind of execution?
Mike, you want to run through that?
Yeah. So we have the business development team is me and Rich, and then we have 2 other guys that help out. We have an analyst who goes through procurement forecasts, does some historical research. And then in the estimating department, we have 5 people, 2 senior estimators, 1 estimator, and 2 assistant estimators. On the project management side, I think we've got about 6 project managers, and each of them have assistant project managers working underneath of them. We have a project executive who kind of oversees all the project management, reports to Rich and I. And then superintendents, we have about 10 superintendents and various tradespeople.
Sure.
Abatement workers. We self-perform demolition and asbestos abatement, environmental remediation, laboratory equipment, casework installation, and we do a little bit of carpentry work. So the rest of the people are field personnel.
Okay.
Well, we've also got, did you touch on estimating?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. and then the electricians. We've got about four.
Yeah, electricians.
Yeah, so that's a huge team to be running, and you guys are doing most of the BD work yourself. And I'm trying just to illustrate, and provide some benefit for some of those listening. As you start getting the team up and running, because obviously you have to execute on these contracts, and in the same breath you have to be selling to the government as well, right? So it sounds like you have someone, when you talked about acquisitions forecast, so kind of when the government forecasts, what their purchasing is going to be over a timeline. So you have somebody that's essentially identifying potential future opportunities for you. And is that where you and Rich take over, or does that go to somebody else to kind of add to the pipeline and, start working, meetings and whatnot?
Yeah, the meetings are always me and Rich. The meetings,
Okay.
the phone calls are Rich or I reaching out to either existing clients, talking about stuff that they have that we see on their forecast coming up, talking about their programs that they have. Yeah, it's usually it's me and Rich.
Okay, that's interesting that you said that. So actually, and I didn't mention it to you guys, we have an academy for just people getting started. And recently we launched a CRM tool for government contracting associated with that, where, and honestly, I just got sick of editing pipelines and CRM tools for companies. So we just built it with all of the steps that you have to kind of follow. But one of the pipelines we built was, I just called it the existing customer upsell pipeline, because it's so important. And I find it's usually the first place to start, especially with companies that are selling to the government that are trying to expand what they're doing, is starting with your customer base. I mean, there's really no better and faster way to expand what you're doing than to work with the government customers that you already have, making sure that, hey, are we delivering what we're supposed to be delivering? Are you happy? By the way, do you need more? Can you recommend us to anybody else? And kind of like you said, maybe we see these projects coming up. Are you associated with them? Is that a big part? It sounds like it's part of your process. Would you say it's a large part of your process, a smaller part, or just trying to get an idea of where you find the most significant areas to focus as far as just to continue to grow and to keep bringing work in?
Yeah, it certainly is. The work on your desk is your greatest marketing tool. So we actually, being in construction, we have guys in the buildings, and we incentivize those guys to try and figure out what's going on, because it's like if they're working in, on floor 6, and then they're talking to the facilities guys, and they find out that there's a renovation coming up, down the hall or down on floor 3. We like to try and get out ahead of that. And then that's actually how we wound up in facilities maintenance, was construction projects that we were doing. And then our existing customers, we wound up picking up. So like one of the facilities maintenance contracts we have is for the laboratories that we were renovating.
Oh, okay.
It was a unique skill set. So, when that came up for recompete, we went after it. And that was that. And then in a couple other buildings, that's kind of how we started to snowball into offering that service.
Interesting. So was there a, I don't mean to cut you off, but was there a incumbent then on there when you mentioned it came up for recompete? So you were able to get in there and beat them out. Probably a lot to do with your reputation at that point.
I think so. Yeah.
That's great. No, that's awesome. And that's a question we get a lot too from, businesses that are looking at opportunities, especially if there are incumbents on there. What should I even bother going after it? What's how low does the P-win go? There are a lot of factors there, I suppose, but this sounds like a success story of going in and taking it over.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get that information, but if they're happy with their incumbent, it's going to be very difficult. If they're not happy with the incumbent, then it's a lot easier. And how you figure out whether they're happy or not is very difficult.
Yeah, no, well, I guess one of those ways is exactly what you just said, right? Which is work with your existing customers. If you have a big team, incentivize them to talk to people, do good work, and those opportunities are going to make themselves known through that process. So no, that's fantastic. Great. So that the maintenance piece, switching over from the construction piece to kind of building maintenance, do you see that as more of, I'm just thinking this through from a company's perspective of, single projects versus recurring work, so do you see in what you're doing, the construction projects, as more are they more one-offs where, hey, build X, and then when you're done, you're done? Or do those turn into kind of recurring projects as well? Or is this building maintenance piece adding that where, hey, now we can go after a 3-year contract, for instance, and, we can see interest increase though. So we know we can keep going year over year.
It's both. So, the cash flow is more steady with the maintenance. But the type of construction that we do, which is really renovation work versus bringing buildings out of the ground, and it's smaller renovation work. So if you think of it as like tenant improvement for laboratories or DoD clients, they're constantly rolling over. They get their budgets every year and they get to pick what they renovate, and it just goes on perpetually. So it is less consistent, but for us, they're both relatively consistent. Well, one is extremely consistent. The construction is pretty consistent for us, just given the nature of the construction that we do. It's not like we're building a bridge and then they don't need another bridge for 50 years and that something like that. It's a constant need, the interior renovation space.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. When you talk about the funding and the projects that they have, just I'm going back to, this may enlighten some people as to kind of how the government forecasts, where I can remember sitting as a wing exec with the wing commander and the civil engineering team and all the finance people, and we would project out, like we would know for the next 2 years what we planned on renovating on the base, and we'd just be, those things would change a little bit, but we'd have a budget. We'd have a good idea of what the budget was going to be year over year, and you're deciding which aspects are going to be renovated. And there's a lot of politics sometimes that goes into that, depending on, because you can have multiple leadership teams on a base, but often in every agency is supposed to have an acquisitions forecast. Some are better than others. But, so you can technically go out there and find an acquisitions forecast that, say, the Army posts or civil engineering posts, and, get a spreadsheet with 1,000 things on there. And, some of them will apply to you, some of them won't. Is that the method you guys use for finding acquisitions forecasts, or are you using, tools like the Deltec, Government IQ, stuff like that? Or, what kind of tools are you using to do that?
A little bit of everything. So we are looking at those forecasts that have every project on them, every dollar they're going to spend on them.
Right.
But then we're also looking at the programs and what the agency's focus is going forward, and trying to position ourselves to be able to compete on those opportunities.
Okay. Does one work better than another, or?
One works faster than the other. The forecasts are more now. The studying programs is a little bit longer term.
Sure. No, I get that. Are you guys involved at looking at things like sources sought and responding to those, or? Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And how about, and this is always an interesting question, sources sought, usually I tell people to stay away from RFPs, but you certainly could just respond to an RFP and win if you hadn't engaged. Although I find that you're much more likely to win if you've been engaging prior to that and working with the office. Do you guys ever just see solicitations that are just so perfect for you that you have to go after them?
Sure.
Yeah. And so obviously, so you say sure. So I'm assuming you are continuing to do that. So you must show some success there.
Yeah. There's no question. If you start at the sources sought and you work with the client and everything, you're more likely to win. But there's some that we just can't not respond to. And we've won a couple of them.
Good. No, that's awesome. Well, let me ask you that, because you guys are the two BD guys. Do you have a proposal writer? Do you hire people to do that work for you?
Yeah, we have a proposal writer.
Okay. Is it a full-time person doing that?
It's outsourced.
Yeah.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that.
He's outsourced. It's a guy we've been working with for a few years. So he's got all the write-ups of all of our projects, and
perfect.
He knows our people and our past.
He's got all the resumes, all the past performance, everything.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, no, it's an important part, and, you doing all that work, trying to find the right thing to go after. And then it gets to that proposal, which, as you know, that could take you a week or two just to full-time person putting all that together, depending on how big the project is.
Sure. Longer. And he is involved in our go, no go decision process. So is the estimating team.
Okay.
So Mike and I, we're the primary screen. So, we can look at them and do a very high level look. and no, yes, no, yes. And then it goes to the rest of the team, and the estimators look at it and be like, I don't know if we're going to be competitive. The proposal writer will look at it and be like, I don't know if we're competitive. And then that's kind of how we filter it down.
Okay, interesting. Is there something that stands out to you? Like, what's the first thing that pops in your head when you think about what is going to be a no-go decision for you on a solicitation?
If it's LPTA, we usually try to stay away from it.
Yeah. Lowest price technically acceptable. Yeah. So for anyone listening, so there is when we say every contract's different, and so you might see let's say a building maintenance services contract that has been competed over and over again, and now it's coming up for bid, but the government can decide that they want to approach that in a different way. And we've seen this a lot, and one of those things that they could do is decide, well, what matters most to us is LPTA, or lowest price technically acceptable. And this is something that, frankly, it makes contractors cringe usually, and it makes the government cringe too, because the government, the people, the program managers and the people working on the government side want the best people. The contractors don't want to have to give the lowest price they could possibly give to do a job, because they want to do it right. When you say LPTA, is it for you, is it just, hey, we don't want to make the margin so small that we're risking the product that we're giving, or what do you see as a problem there?
It's our past performance with all the laboratory work that we do. We have very technical, complicated past performance, and for people to be able to run those projects, sometimes they demand a premium. So we like to think of ourselves as a contractor who can handle complicated projects, problem projects for the customer. And usually, anybody can do an office space renovation. Anybody can do, these simple tasks,
Right.
not simple tasks, but any general contractor can do a lot of work. We like to go after those ones that are a little bit more complicated, and they tend to have a heavy technical component to them as well.
Sure. Because you mentioned finding great people earlier, and you mentioned project managers, I think, is one of the first positions. So when you're looking for a project manager that can do the work, or that that can function in that area, does that mean you're looking for somebody with, like, say, is it, hey, they need a PMP to be able to do this, or do they need a technical degree? Or is it maybe a combination of factors, like maybe they need a security clearance or be familiar with the federal government? Or, what are the types of things that you're finding, difficult to find someone with the right mix?
So none of the work we do requires a security clearance. So that's not important to us. We're looking for somebody who has stable history at their previous employer, somebody who's been there for a long time. So that it helps us show that somebody's dependable. We can train people on our processes. We can train people on the work. We're really looking for talented individuals, hardworking individuals, self-starting individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. No, getting harder and harder these days to find great people, especially if it's in-person work where you're not working virtually. A lot of people want to do a variety of things, but you learn so much actually going out and working on a site, especially on one of these federal projects, that if you're willing to do that, and like you said, you have some of those qualities, that could be really rewarding. Great for your company, great for them personally.
Well, and Rick, I'll just chime in real quick. The people we do have on board are incredible, and they do deserve some credit here. We're talking about attracting additional
people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm not trying to imply that you don't.
No. But if any of them are watching, they do a fantastic job. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I have a couple of questions that and we can talk about. We really take the conversation wherever you want to. But curious, right now, are you guys still national? Meaning, you guys staying CONUS work within the United States, or have you ventured outside of the continental United States?
We are within the continental United States, and specifically the Mid-Atlantic region. Okay. We do look at some very unique projects outside of the Mid-Atlantic, but for the most part, everything's. I mean, 90% of what we do is between Fort Detrick, Aberdeen, and DC. Kind of, if you drew a triangle there, and then made it into a circle, that'd be
Yeah.
where we.
What's a good place to be located for this type of work?
Yeah.
What?
But
Go ahead.
But no, we have chased stuff and entertained stuff outside of that region, and we'll continue to do so. But it has to be a really, really good fit, and we have to really do our homework and make sure that we would be successful when we get there.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Now, so you guys have been at this for a while. Is the plan? We want to build a company as big as we can within, the federal contracting realm. Are you looking at potentially selling the business down the line at some point? What's or maybe you haven't got that far yet. What are you thinking as far as these are some big goals we have for Matos over the next, 10 to 30 years?
Well, the plan has always been to grow, like we've talked about, a niche business that is built up of, like relatively small, extremely high performing team that can really focus on these specialized projects for our clients. And that's government and institutional. We want to be the go-to guys for, it's sometimes we say 95% or 95% of their headaches come from 5% of their projects. And we want to be the 5%, the Advil, so to speak, to go alleviate that headache. And then, it's to build the team, and the goal has never really been to try and grow to $500 million a year or something like that. It's just been to have a very high quality, smaller, somewhat boutique firm that really is like a brand for when they get one of these projects that comes across their desk, and they can say, hey, you know what, this is a Matos project. I want to use these guys.
Yeah.
And then it's to have it go on for, several decades. Mike and I are not terribly old, we're not as young as we were, but, we want to keep it going for a while. And then an acquisition would be way down the road if we were to go that route.
Okay.
Right now we're focused on just continuing to improve, continuing to growing the customer base, growing our brand, and continuing to add, great people to the team.
Okay. Interesting. There's, going from kind of being a startup with a very small team to where you're at now. I know you said technically you're still a small business, of course the government considers you a small business, depending on, your NAICS code can change that, but it's usually 500 employees or less, or, your revenue will dictate that. But, when you get to the point where you're at now, do you find yourself having to get involved more with, some of, I don't want to say the bureaucracy of a big company, but, getting involved with things like having to establish company values and, an HR department and, some of the things that come along with that, training on security and, is that stuff starting to, take up some of your time, or is it more just focused on, hey, we need to, solve as many problems as we can for the government right now, and do it well?
That's a big part of what we do. Yeah. We spend a lot of time on it, and have gotten some coaching on it, and, how to set up the processes so that, everything's more consistent. Because, when you get all these different people in there, it's, it's keeping everybody operating in the same, to the same standards. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it. There's always room for improvement. We're constantly trying to tweak it.
Yeah.
But, we first started writing process 4 or 5 years ago, Mike.
Something like that.
And then every year or two, we kind of tear it apart and redo it and try and implement it, and everybody gets all upset. And then you gotta,
But we also have gotten some employees that have come in and said, like, hey, this is a great process, but I think I can make it better. And they've taken ownership of it, and they've tweaked it and made it better.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's what you want too. You want some people to come in there and not just be kind of part-timing it and, not coming up with ideas. Well, let me ask you this then. So when you're dealing with a team of that size, because we get a lot of, the initial questions are always, how can I win my first contract? How do I, register? How do I do certifications matter? What are the steps? But then they start winning contracts, and, they have to figure out, well, how do I fund what's going on before the government invoices us? How do I, what does the best sales team structure look like? And then speaking of those processes, like, well, how often am I having meetings with the team? Like, what should I be doing? Can you give me maybe a snapshot of what your battle rhythm looks like as far as just managing a federal contracting team of the size that you have? And specifically, I guess I'm thinking about like, things like sales meetings or program management meetings. What do you need to do big picture to make sure everything runs smoothly?
So we have a BD meeting every week, and that includes a representative from the estimating team, our BD analyst, and Rich and myself. And then weekly, we also have estimating and project management meetings. So we sit down and we go look at everything we're estimating right now, everything we have on our bid board, and then we go over all the active jobs we have with the project managers. Then we also have a staffing meeting every other week. We meet with our project executive and our senior superintendent or general superintendent, and we look at who we have, what the schedule looks like, and where we need to move people around. And then we also have a financial meeting, which involves me, Rich, and then our back office staff. And we go over all the project financials and the company financials.
Interesting.
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably just spend an entire podcast just on, how you got to the process and, maybe some of the specifics there. I do have a couple questions though. I guess one would be when we're thinking about sales and your, you mentioned your bid board, which I'm assuming is kind of like your pipeline with the opportunities you're going after. Is that accurate?
Well, the pipeline and the bid board are two different things.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Pipelines are opportunities we're tracking, and then once it becomes an actual opportunity, it goes on the bid board.
So once you win the contract, it goes on the bid board?
Once it becomes a solicitation,
Gotcha.
It goes on the bid board.
Okay, interesting. And so when you're doing that, when you're putting that construct together, what is the mechanism of ensuring that you're going to hit your financial goals for the year? So if you had and I'm not going to, obviously we don't have to talk about your specific numbers, but let's just say that you had it and yours is going to be a lot higher than this. But if you had it, you knew you needed, or your goal was $1 million in revenue with the government, right? So what's your process for doing that? Do you guys track things like, hey, our conversion rates are X, so our pipeline has to be a lot bigger than that? Or is it a little bit more, nuanced where, you're kind of looking at each opportunity to see what you think the percentage of win is going to be?
It's the former. So we know one of our employees that has improved our process has started tracking our win percentage, what our general conditions are on the jobs that we win, what they are on the jobs that we lose, like what's our average loss, or like, dollar value or percentage. Mm-hmm. So we know where we want to be and we work backwards from there. And really just if an opportunity seems like it's a fit, we pursue it.
Okay.
And try to pursue as many opportunities as we can and we think would be good use of our time.
Yeah, no, that's smart. And it's, and the reason I bring it up, I know some of the listeners struggle with, especially after they start winning a few, is what does the process look like for them where they're not just going after things haphazardly and hoping for the best. And so we always talk about, I used $1 million because it's easy math, right? So if you win 10% of your, the things you're going after, well, in theory, you need a $10 million pipeline to at least hit that $1 million, right? So, and then, you do better usually as you go on. So 25%, you do the math. And it sounds like you do something along those lines, and you obviously have other specifications too, for deciding on that. Yeah, really interesting. Have you guys had any struggles with, on the finance side of things, you're winning contracts, invoicing the government, any issues there where it's just delays that have kind of put you guys behind, and maybe how you've dealt with that, or just, no, everything works exactly as it's supposed to. And, we haven't had to deal with any of that on the government side.
I think that, when we were first starting out, obviously that was way more of an issue. And yeah, like you're saying, the government delays, stuff like that. And we always just took a very conservative approach to what we were doing, how much money we were personally taking out of the company, how we were growing, and we kind of just grew organically. It's been years since that has been an issue for us. Fortunately, financial stability has been, pretty strong for the past couple of years. But yeah, starting out, I think we just took a very, organic, hey, we're gonna get the job, we're gonna get it done, we're gonna get another job, we're gonna get it done. We didn't leverage ourselves. We didn't because it's risky, right? So you don't want to have a new company. If the new company fails, it's catastrophic for the owners.
Yeah.
If the company fails, but then you're stuck with a bunch of debt, it's way worse. So we were always very conservative with our approach, and I would grow slower, but more conservatively was the approach we took.
Okay, interesting. The some of the big things in the federal contracting space right now are CMMC, FedRAMP. I don't know that FedRAMP will actually affect you guys just because of what you do, maybe. But CMMC, I would think to some degree would. Is that something that's coming up, and having to put certain security postures in place? And maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we had to hire an IT consultant when that started, when that all came down to CMMC. We did the self survey, and we passed. But we hired an IT consultant to help us walk through that and transition from our old system to the system we're using now.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, for those listening, what we're talking about, I want to say, I mess up the acronym every time. I think it's cyber risk maturity model, something along those lines. But basically, you have documents from the government like NIST 800, 171 that'll talk about different security parameters that need to be in place. And there's a self-assessment that companies have kind of voluntarily been taking, where you go through the parameters and you generate a score, and you can input that score. I think it's called SPRS, where you put the score, input the score. But what's been happening lately, because CMMC, unless it happened recently, CMMC is going to be the law soon. I don't believe it quite is yet. But what we've seen is clients having to, well, depending on when this airs, but we've had clients that have been on contract with the government for quite a while, all of a sudden get an email, hey, we cannot give you another contract. We can't do another delivery order on your IDIQ until you have your SPRS score in the system, your self-assessment with a plan in place, your POAMs, everything to show us how you're going to get well. And so even and a lot of businesses have thought that, if they weren't in software or, some high technology, that it wouldn't apply to them, but it's not the case. And of course, you guys run a construction business, which is growing, and it applies to you as well. So, I think it's good just to be able to highlight that for everyone that, this is something you need to take a look at. Great. Well, hey, what's on the horizon for you guys? I mean, you've been very generous, with your time here today, talking about some of the specifics and things that I think people need to be aware of, and some of the challenges that you've overcome, and some of the great work you've done. What's the outlook here for the next couple of years? What are you guys excited about?
Go ahead.
I think that I'm very excited about the joint venture with MCOR and getting into the facilities maintenance, as well as we have some pending large IDIQs that are out there that I'm not at liberty to speak about right now, but if they came through, would be really beneficial for us. And then it's just continuing to grow, continuing to refine the process, and just trying to grow within the spaces we're in, and adding a couple of select new spaces and watching it go. It is exciting. There's a bright future. I think that we have, more opportunity than we've ever had. So we feel very strong, very bullish on the next, at least 5 years.
Awesome. Yeah. You guys are killing it. And I think, you may remember, I think it was a couple months ago, I have people that do reach out about your episode and make comments on it. And I've had other people that have said, hey, can you set me up? Can I be in a mentor protege role with Matos, and, have those guys, because they sound like they really know what they're doing. if someone listening wanted to reach out and, get a little bit of advice, is that something that they could do through LinkedIn or something, or, is it better for them to stand off?
No,
Sure.
no, please do. I believe, Ricky, didn't I think I spoke to one of your buddies.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah. Really great company.
Academy member. Yeah. And he was thrilled. He's like, hey, these guys, they're very responsive and everything. I didn't want to overwhelm you guys with people saying, hey, can you, can I get some advice too? But, it's really not a huge community once you get into it. Federal contracting space, it's a niche skill set, and relationship, despite all of like the strategies and regulations, relationships are extremely important. So, finding someone you could trust and talk to about things like this is very important.
Yeah, no, please tell them to do so. And also, like we said, if you're finding success inside or outside of the government, just don't stop doing it. Don't think that, the government is the answer. It could be. We've never stopped private sector work. And thank goodness for that, because there have been times where, the government slows down. I mean, during COVID, they slowed down. I do feel like it's back now. But, keep doing whatever it is. Don't stop. Think that the grass is greener somewhere else. Yeah.
That's a good point. We talked a little bit about having a commercial pipeline as well as a federal pipeline for just that reason. And of course, the federal pipeline can offset your commercial pipeline if that slows down and economy's lagging. So, I mean, it's beneficial, both sides. It's also beneficial if you do want to sell your business at some point, because those government contracts can really increase valuation. And it's something I know a lot of investors are looking for. So that's great. Any parting thoughts, anything you guys want to talk about before we close? I want to be respectful of your time here today.
I'm good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. You guys always give awesome advice, and I know everyone's going to be really pumped to hear this episode. Yeah, and follow up on Matos and what you guys are doing now. For anyone listening, I will put all the links in the description in the podcast. Also, go to YouTube also, so you can reach out to Matos if you want to, or just check out the website. Same for any government personnel out there that interested in the specialty, and they'll know where to find you and reach out. It sounds like you guys have an amazing team put together, and I love the systems you have in place. So yeah, only good things here coming in the future.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Good times. All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening this week to DoD Contract Academy. Great interview with the guys from Matos, and I'm sure we'll have them on again once they're a large business and just dominating the whole construction and maintenance industry within the Fed. But hey, check out dodcontract.com, guys, if you're looking for a little bit of help or training. And of course, in the podcast episodes, we have a lot of different tactics and strategies. Let us know in the comments if you want anything specific, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.